But again, I'm in the end of balance. I'm with Pulte Mortgage, and I'm the mortgage finance advisor in Hilton Head. And to come and share a personal story with you guys this morning. And I hope that in some way it can help you, whether it's to understand that there's someone sitting out there in this audience, someone you know, that you know nothing about, or whether it's to appreciate the small things in life and to really realize how life is short. Or whether you can realize through adversities and every challenge that we go through, that's where we learn the most. That's where we gain our strength and knowledge. So my story is, tomorrow will be 17 years that I went to bed and woke up as a different person. At the age of 25, on February the 13th, 1999, I had a massive stroke. When February 1st, 1999 rolled around, I was living life. I was a mother to a beautiful 2-year-old little girl named Brittany. I was married to my high school sweetheart, lived nearby my family, and had it all figured out, or so I thought. I was preparing with my little girl for her first beauty pageant that was to be held in March. It was going to be so much fun. I was going to walk her across the stage. I was going to be the proud mom while she blew kisses and did her cute little curtsies. I was going to help her hold her trophy as she walked across the stage. My biggest problem that day was, what color dress should she wear? You know, what color dress should we pick out for her? How long should it be? Will she trip on the stage when she's going by? When I went to bed that night, I remember thinking, did I put the dishes in the dishwasher last night? What am I going to wear tomorrow? Where's the cheapest place to get gas the next day? I woke up on February the 13th, 1999, and felt like I was on a ride at the fair. Everything in sight was spinning. I knew something was wrong, but I had no idea what lay before me. I made it to the tub, hoping that a good hot soak would help relax me and make everything okay. As I laid in the tub, I noticed my right side become numb, and I slowly slipped under the water. I had no control or ability to move. My mind was telling me, Amanda, throw yourself over the side of the tub to avoid drowning, but my body just wouldn't listen. It wouldn't move. My husband noticed the problem I was having and saw me slipping under the water and decided, she must need some help. I'm going to come over and pull her out. He laid me on the bed, and I remember thinking, I looked up at the ceiling thinking, oh my God, this is how I'm going to die. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak. I couldn't feel anything, but I knew everything that was going on around me. As he laid me on the bed, the ambulance arrived, and everyone hurried around me to see what was going on, to do some quick observation and try to figure out what was going on. It was such a detached feeling from everything around me. I was scared out of my mind, but it was very peaceful in some way. I often wonder if this is what it feels like right before we die. Do we know that in these last few minutes, this is all that's left? So we breathe in and appreciate every last second. Or do we worry that we didn't get a chance to say goodbye to certain people we will miss? I laid there and wondered, have I done all I can do? I felt helpless. I knew whatever was happening, it was completely out of my control. EMS asked me several questions. EMS took my hand and asked me to squeeze tightly, and no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't do it. I did have some movement on my left side, but absolutely nothing on my right. What a weird feeling to hear but cannot speak, to understand but cannot show emotion. It seemed like eternity, but only a few moments went by, and I was put into the ambulance. I briefly remember the ambulance ride, but I do remember one specific moment that will stay with me until the day that I die. EMS tech rode with me in the back of the ambulance and tried to comfort me as much as possible. He said, "What a beautiful little girl you've got. What's her name?" I stared into his eyes and said with every bit of effort I could muster, "Brittany." He said, "Oh, Brandy is such a pretty name." Tears fell down my face. I felt a piercing in my heart. I couldn't even say my little girl's name. I remember the sound of the siren from the inside of the ambulance. It's much different from the sound when you're in the car and you move to the right-hand lane to let them pass. As you move to the right-hand lane, you hear the siren and it goes away in the distance. But this time the siren didn't go away. I remember the speed as everything in the back of the ambulance moved around, but what I remember most is what I couldn't feel. I couldn't feel my arms and I couldn't feel my legs. We arrived at the hospital and I entered the emergency room. The concern and apprehension on everyone's face was so evident. I wanted to express that I wasn't gone. I was completely aware of everything around me. I tried my best to speak 2 simple words. I understand. Every person I said that to looked at me and thought, what in the world is this chick trying to say to us? After what felt like a lifetime of poking and prodding, I was sent to have an MRI. This would tell everyone everything we needed to know once the test was complete and I was admitted to the ICU. My mother came in to see me. She let me know that family was here and a crowd was in the waiting room. I know this was supposed to make me feel better, but it really just made everything seem so real. I remember thinking, how could this be happening to me? I'm only 25 years old. I'm not overweight. I was healthy at the time. What did I do wrong? What was I in a mess? A neurologist came in to see me after the results of the MRI were in, and I was able to explain the reason I had a stroke, or he was able to explain the reason I had a stroke. He explained the vertebral artery at the base of my brainstem had dissected, causing the blood flow to my brain to stop. Later he explained that the arteries are made of several different layers, and that some of the layers had flaked off, causing a balloon blockage effect in my neck. He stated, "This is truly just a freak accident." I cried out loud. I couldn't help it. It was though my whole life that existed just yesterday was completely gone. I now had a body that wouldn't work and a mouth that wouldn't speak. How was I going to be any kind of mother or any kind of wife? The doctor told us the next 24 hours were critical, and I needed to relax and try to stay as calm as possible. Any rise in blood pressure was extremely dangerous. He told my family after leaving my room that if I made it through these next 24 hours, there would most certainly be a long road ahead of me and possible permanent repercussions. I was only allowed to see certain people at certain times, but I remember every one of their faces. I remember feeling very embarrassed by the way that I spoke. Another day came and awoke. I remember the first feeling I had. Please, please, God, just let this be a bad dream. Please let me wake up and go to the bathroom and go about everything as normal. I felt sad, angry, trapped, and alone. Another day came and I awoke. I remember the first feeling I had again. Just please, God, let this be a bad dream. And it wasn't. The doctor came in to see me and was pleased that I made it through the night. He said, "You made it, kid." What? I thought, this is not making it. This is awful. He said, "You definitely have a long road ahead of you. Just take this day by day, and we will strive to see some improvement each and every day." I remember watching the clock on the wall at the foot of my hospital bed day after day. I was only allowed to have visitors every other hour for 10 minutes increments at a time. I had so much time to think. Minutes felt like hours, days felt like weeks. My family and friends would come in and visit for those 10 minutes and saw the same thing on their faces each and every time. Their eyes were full of worry for me and full of fear of what to say. I had help to do the most simplest of tasks. I thank God for my family. They were there for me through it all. I had to have help to eat, help to bathe, help to move. I recall a time when my mother was feeding me. I wanted to help and try to get up. I rolled over, threw my feet off the bed, and passed out. My new normal was not going to be pretty. It was going to take time, patience, and a lot of hard work to get where I wanted to be. After my time in the ICU, I was moved to the therapy floor in the hospital. This floor was quite different. The doctor explained that the first 3 months after having a stroke were the most critical. He said everything you can push yourself to do in these 3 months will be extremely important for your overall achievement. My new room in the hospital was very different. Stretching bands replaced the heart monitor. Squishy balls and what looked to be homemade gadgets were everywhere. I was wheeled into my new hospital room and remember thinking, wait a minute, it looks like I'm going to be here for a while. For 2 straight days, I cried. I hated my new life. I didn't understand why this happened to me. I was so bitter. But I did know that I didn't want to have to continue to have help to even do the smallest of tasks. Grabbing toilet paper off the roll seemed like a job. How was I going to get dressed on my own? How was I going to bring the food to my mouth on my own? The 3rd day came and my mom brought my sweet little baby girl to see me. She ran to me and I remember that smell. There's nothing like it. The smell of her neck, right at her hairline, to this day, I still call it my neck sugar. It was my Brittany. What joy she brought me. They also brought me some pictures from the house to hang in my room. I remember thinking so differently about those pictures than I did before the stroke. Pictures are a good glance of how life should be spent. You take a picture in a moment that you're happy and you're enjoying life. A time you want to remember. A time to preserve the feelings that you're having at that very moment. And that's how we should enjoy every minute. That's how we should live every moment. As though you're constantly in a moment that will not last forever. Looking at pictures now, I see what I could have missed. The dreaded moment came when my family had to leave and the therapy work would begin. My mom and Brittany turned to leave, and I watched a sweet little Brittany walk down the hallway. Her little blonde curls bounced on her shoulders, and she turned the corner, and she was gone. My therapist grabbed my wheelchair, and off we went to the therapy room. He wheeled me into a room with about 20 old people, who just stared at me. I remember thinking, not that they're being rude, I'm sure, it's just that I was clearly out of place. He brought me to a table and sat before me, and he said, Amanda, now we begin to use your arms again. Tears poured down my face. Feeling sorry for myself was an understatement. He looked at me, grabbed my hands, and said, do you want to be the one walking your little girl down the hallway, or do you want to be the one watching as she leaves? I nodded my head, yes, and I said, I want to walk. He said, well, let's get to work. I went back to the room that night knowing that if I ever was going to be out of the hospital or not put into a nursing home, that I had to do whatever it took to make it happen. Didn't know how I was going to do it, but I sure knew why. I suddenly remembered the pageant. Oh my God, the pageant. I will not be able to see my baby girl walk across that stage. Never mind, not being able to walk her myself. The second day before I was brought to therapy, I prayed. I prayed that no matter how hard I had to work, no matter what it would take of me, I prayed to God to give me strength to help make me make progress. Every day after that, I started each morning the same. A funny thing happened after I started the days that way. I began to feel appreciative. I began to be glad that I was still alive. I was so glad to have the opportunity to be able to have a second chance to get better. In the therapy room, I would sit and stare at the objects that were placed in front of me, that I tried to grab and tried to feel. And I remember sitting next to an older lady that became sick and vomited right next to me. I remember being across from a man that used the bathroom on himself. I began to concentrate and remember that each step I make, no matter how small it is, it would be progress. I began to realize that everyone goes through tough times, and their life, and I had to do what it took to get better. Hours passed, days passed, weeks passed. Each day the same. I would wake at 6, pray, get closer and closer to moving my fingers, then my hands, and then my body. I had 3 therapy sessions during the day. First was physical therapy, trying to move and squeeze objects. Second was speech therapy, repeating A, 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 E, 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 I, O, 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 over and over until my throat was sore. And then third and last was occupational therapy, trying to learn to write again and use ordinary household items. The day ended at 5, but for me, I would wheel back to my room and use my tools that were given to me by the therapist to work out my hands and legs until I fell asleep. It was awful. All this work just to be able to do what everyone in the outside world does with what seems to be no effort. I also had a hidden fear that I would have another stroke and this terrible ordeal would start right back over. What a powerful thing our mind is. It can take control over you. One of my favorite sayings is from Henry Ford. Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. I was lucky. I was seeing progress. Maybe not as fast as I wanted, but I could see a difference each day. I remember the first time I was able to pick up a pen and write my name. It looked like a 3-year-old's handwriting. It didn't really look like my name, but I was able to hold that pen. I remember finally being able to make that stupid ring move across the PVC arch from one side to the other. You would have thought I opened the door to someone holding $1 million check, saying, "Congratulations, you're a millionaire." It was then that I realized if I can appreciate the small victories, tiny improvements, have joy in the simplest of things, then I was the richest person in the world. The day came for Brittany's pageant. The doctor allowed me to leave the hospital for a few hours and spend time with some of my family. I wasn't able to walk, but I was so excited that I would be able to go see her. What a change. Before, I was looking forward to walking her across that stage and helping her hold her trophy on this special day. And today, I was just happy to be able to attend. Brittany's dad took on the role of walking her across the stage that day as I sat in the audience. It was a sobering and special day for me. I realized that we were going to make it. May not be the way I planned, but life was moving forward. She received the runner-up second place spot, and I couldn't have been more proud. Like I mentioned before, I had a new sense of gratitude and being able to be in the moment. I was brought back to the hospital that night and watched as everyone left. But instead of crying, I decided to get to work. I stayed up until midnight that night using my therapy instruments and trying to get my legs to move. I vowed to spend every waking moment being dedicated to being the best person I could be. As the days went by, I progressed more and more rapidly. And after months of therapy, I was released from the hospital and was able to go home. What a day. I was still unable to walk, but I had use of my hands and feet. I was able to speak, not clearly, but I was able to get across what I wanted to say. I was so thankful, so grateful. Grateful to my family, grateful to the doctors and therapists, and grateful to God. I kept working, kept striving for more and more each day until I was finally able to walk. The feeling of the ground touching my feet was priceless. Each day brought small victories, but I made sure to keep a goal in mind each day. After a few months had passed, I was told of a girl named Kathy. She was in a nursing home and she'd had the same type of stroke I had, but she never recovered. She had to use a chart that was located above her bed to communicate. She would use her eyes to move up and down to spell out the letters in the alphabet. I knew I had to visit her. I was a bit reluctant at first because I didn't want her to see me and be discouraged and think, why is she walking and I'm not? I sat with her for hours with a pen and paper and we had a conversation. When we were done, she said seeing me had given her hope. I left the nursing home, in tears that day. Savannah Morning News published an article about locked-in syndrome, which is a condition that occurs after a stroke, and they did an article on mine and Kathy's visit. Locked-in syndrome is a condition in which a patient is aware but cannot move or communicate verbally due to complete paralysis of nearly all voluntary muscles in the body except for your eyes. It became very, very clear to me. Maybe I couldn't walk as fast as before. Maybe I couldn't speak as clearly, but I was alive. I was able to breathe. Kathy was able to go home, but unfortunately, I learned she passed away in 2007. So many people live with hurt or disadvantages, but yet the world still goes on. I don't profess to know the answer to my story and why I was given a second chance, but I do know two things. Life is going to happen. We will be dealt with things in our lives that we don't want, things we can't control, and things we'd rather ignore. But we can control how we choose to deal with it. We can control our attitudes and our mindset and make goals each day to achieve and make ourselves better people. Everyone in this audience has a story. Some are much, much more difficult than mine. But I know that if we can find that something in our lives that makes all the difference, that something that creates a spark so big that we are willing to do whatever it takes to overcome, then there's nothing that we can't accomplish. There's nothing we can't learn a lesson from. If you can find that one that motivates you, truly, truly motivates you, work hard to accomplish your goals, and then appreciate the adversity that you've been given. There will be no sweeter moment in life. Thank you so much for your time.